not going to do the whole thing, but this is a companion video to how you do architectural plans in Autocad. And this is designed for people basically to get this shtick of how to go about drafting in Sketchup using the kind of Autocad methodology until you can break out and use it the way you're supposed to draft this, which is just naturally with faces. So what I've done is I've got a whole lot of things up, or a lot of what I'm going to start with is make sure that as you get going, you start to realize that you can turn toolbars on and off. So I'll turn a few off. View. You want to really have the large tool set up there, and I'm going to turn a couple of these sketchy physics ones off. View. Toolbars. Turn off the sketchy solids, which I never really like to do because I love SketchUp and sketchy physics. And I'm going to actually turn a bunch off there. And I just want to make sure that you know that you want to get this set up with the large tool set on the left, so everyone gets consistent on the look. And then what you're also going to do is, like you start any model, no matter what you start with the template, you want to all of a sudden check your units. So I'm going to change this to architectural units and inches before I get started. I'm going to just show you, in effect, the other things that you can do to set up to think draft flat for a while, and that is the camera. We're going to make it a parallel projection, and then camera standard views top. And you've got this general look of down, and then you want to then draft. And now I'm starting the drafting per se. I'm going to start and draft my first two baselines correctly, and I'm going to kind of do this one. From memory, I remember I'm going to take this up in that direction. I'm going to finish it and then go and type 25 feet. And it will have drafted a line that goes pretty far out. I'll then left click on another line, and now take click, right click and erase. And I'm going to make this 25 feet. You'll notice that what hurts your view sometimes is the fact that it puts an axis there. So that kind of going back to the view and turn your axis on and off. View, axis on and off. And what I'm doing is I'm laying out these baselines as I would in any program. I'm going to click over here and then say 35 feet. And I've got now the basis of essentially a set of lines that are in fact my baselines. And now I'm going to do like you do in AutoCAD. I'm going to use offsets, even though these aren't absolutely perfect when I think about how this has a little knockout on it. I'm going to grab the line. So you grab the tool, grab the line, grab the tool, can touch the control on a Windows machine and an Alt on an Apple machine, and then that control does a copy. I've drafted from line to line. And once again, learning how to do things by offsets. This is going to assure that your lines have the right direction. I'm clicking over the tool, hitting the control button from here to here, and I've got essentially what I've got, and you'll notice it does not fill in that space here as I would expect. And I've got something now that I'm considering is going to be the 25-foot. This is the outside of the building. And now I'm going to do some offsetting because I want to go about getting used to the fact that layers are in fact important. And I can all of a sudden, what I'm going to do to keep it consistent is draft in a center line layer. And realistically, I could go about changing the, putting this together. If I draft on top of one of these things now, it will start to actually draft. It'll fill in the region inside of it. What I'm going to do here is I'm turning this back on, and now I'm going to just do my offsets. And you can't use the offset tool until it's a face, but I'm going to use the copy tool. This is an 8-inch wide. I'm hitting the control here, and it's not finding it. So I'm going to hit escape. I'm going to grab select tool. So grab tool, hit control, and I'm going to take now and move this, taking my hand off the mouse. That was an 8-inch wall, so I'm going 4 inches. That's taken that. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Click this one over here. Select tool, hitting a control, taking my hand off the mouse, 4 inches. I've got that one 4 inches out. Now I can do the same thing here. Click, and you'll notice what happens here when I click tool, hit the control, holding that, letting my hand off the mouse, 4 inches. And effect right here. Select, hitting a control, taking my hand off the mouse, 4 inches. And I'm going to pause here and listen to some information coming out of Tokyo. But we'll be right back. And we see now, zooming in here, that in fact, if I click on that, it actually breaks that line. So let me hit a pause here. We're zoomed here. Again, we're all keeping track of what's happening in Japan, and our thoughts go out to everyone there. We're aware of, I'm erasing pieces out here of the innovation that comes out of Japan, and of how much we are all affected in a global economy. There, but for the grace of God, go St. Louis and or California. So I've gone around here, and now you can start to see one of the odd things you'll see later that you're not used to. I'm going to grab. I'm holding the shift key now to 1, 2, hold the shift key here, and then hold the shift key there. I've gone and selected those things, which means if I now go over the top of one of them and right click, I can do the entity info, and I can make sure that everything is on the center line, which it is. So that's actually pretty good. Now that's my center line. In the end here, I'm going to go ahead and erase this out. Erase. And now all I've got is essentially this concept of the center line, which later on I can go on and kind of follow around through. So I really want to point out here how important it is to learn to draft center lines. I'm going to point out now here, even though because the way I drafted this by offset, it did not fill in. But as soon as I draft a line on top of another line, you see that kind of see that face fill in. So sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. I'm going to hit Control Z here and kind of continue a little bit in this reign, just to let you know that at any point in time you can actually go ahead and make something like this an entity. But I'm going to go ahead and just offset a couple of lines here, and then set a new layer to center line and interior. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a 10 foot, and I'm going to do it this way, going off here, clicking on the thing, the tool, hitting the control key, taking this over here, and I can click anywhere I want and then say 10 feet. So it's kind of a different thread, I'm going to go here, click on this, and if you notice, as soon as you do that, these things get cut up. So there is actually a variable that can be changed. It shouldn't necessarily throw you, but I'm going to go from here to here. Got to hit the control key to do the copy, take your hand off. You can hit that and then say 10 feet. Your pause, you can let it fill it in. So right here, I'm going to go ahead and grab this. I'm going to erase, and now these, I'm going to end up making a new layer. So the layer, you're going to go here, and now you're going to make a new layer called centerline underscore interior. Whether or not you're going to use it or not, you can kind of want to get used to in Sketchup very quickly going through and adding the layer function. I'm going to go change that entity info to centerline interior, and from there you can go forward. So I'm going to go ahead and do one more. Later on you can see I'll go ahead and add another one, which I don't know offhand, but I'm going to offset maybe 12 and 12. So I'm going to grab this. Now if you notice that, I hit this here, hit a control key. I'm doing everything in my brain 12 feet, and I'm going to take this line here and go here, hit a control, moving it in this direction, click, and then 12 feet. That, of course, now I have this concept of these lines not necessarily working and not having the fillet in here. So the approximation to a fillet basically is to actually go to the end, click, go over the back, and then it's going to lock that edge and take you to where you want to be. Same thing here, go to a line, go backwards, it's going to lock that edge, and you see how things start to fill in. What I'm doing each time as I'm drafting this, I'm right-clicking and getting rid of the middle parts. And I'm going to finally end up with this. Remembering that, of course, the layer things are on. Right-click on the top of something, Entity Info. I'm going to put it all on Centerline Interior now. Later on, you'll see there's going to be a value to that. I'm going to do that now within, just to kind of give you the general sense of how this is then used. I'm going to go ahead, in this case, I'm going to go ahead and just go ahead and change the layer and make a new right now, Window, Layers, and I'm going to go extruded wall, or I'm going to go with this, exterior, extruded underscore wall, and we'll see where we come upon that. I'm going to go ahead and now kind of tie you into how immediately you go to 3D, Window, Layers, and I'm going to turn off the interior wall. and I'm going to leave the center line on, and I'm going to draft on my exterior wall. So I'm going to come here. One of the key things in this program, I'm going to turn the axis back on now. You see that I'm off my 0, 0 point, as you're always going to want to have off to the side some sort of box. And then what I'm going to do is turn myself up from that. I'm hitting the P for push, pushing this out. You always want to grab things, and I'm grabbing across the top, right click, and making a group. I have that for this reason. If I want to go ahead and start drafting something to kind of extrude through here, right, it'll be a little bit easier if I just draft it in something that's got a face. So I'm going to now go ahead and do this. Just in case, I'm going to go ahead and draft something from the down. I'm going to kind of go here more or less. I'm going to move it in that direction. I'm going to make it 8 inches. And it did it. I'm going to now think about it. I'm going to move this down. This is in 3D space. I want to move it down. I'm going to make it 8 foot down. So I'm going to grab. And I'm going to take this, hitting a control, and moving it down. You notice it's grabbing that blue axis. I'm telling it 8 feet. Now when I do that, right, someplace down there, it's kind of hopefully filling in something later on that I can fill and do that. Now you're going to see later on I'm going to start breaking my rules, but this concept of going here, it's more or less a copy parallel in Autocad. If you notice there, I did not grab from endpoint to endpoint when I did that, so there was issues way down here as well. So I'm going to go ahead and this time hope that these things are on top of one another, even though they might not be. I'll draft a line from the endpoint to the endpoint, and once again go here, hit the copy, hit the control key, grab from one to the other. And I hope, as you see here, I didn't draft this that well in the first place, or I didn't move it correctly. If I go here, things get wacky, right? So I'm going to hit a control Z. Try it one more time. Whoa, that got a little odd. Sketchup, help. I'm going to close that. Whoa, not so good. I grabbed the wrong key, so hopefully it doesn't whack you out a little bit. I'm going to got my line in my line. I'm going to go ahead and realize, by gosh, it would have been a lot easier just to draft this in the flat. Try one more here. From the endpoint to the endpoint. Try another one just by drafting it from the endpoint. And you'll see later on you're better off. If we look at this now, is everything grabbed? Is it all right? It's hard to say. Looks like it did it. And if I go ahead now and draft one on top of the other, but it doesn't close, and it does, that you're kind of okay. And so what I'm going to do now, in the short term, before I move this thing around, I'm going to once again, now I'm just going to draft. I'm going to hold something out here and hope that it drafts. You see that? It's hard for me to figure out what's going on. Edit, undo. So instead I can draft right over here, and I can draft on here, and I can say, now take my hand off the mouse, say 2 foot, comma, 6 inches. And I got something there, which means I can then just kind of grab this. I can hit now that kind of move, hit a control, grab from there, because it's in the right face. I can go to there and grab that. And hopefully if these things are all coplanar, I can go ahead and actually then get rid of this one piece here and erase. Now I've got something here that in the end I want to make sure I go ahead and tend to group this before I do much with it. I'm going to grab across, right click, make a group, make a component, as the case will be. Very often I can now grab this, hit a control key for the copy again, take it to where I want, and now finally you'll see that's something that I can eventually explode. And this is where you kind of would go to where the 2D meets the 3D. And now I'm going to say, I am going to select face to extrude, and now I can kind of take it all the way around the edge. And it does an awfully good job, maybe not at the very end there, but I'm going to leave it open. So you see how quickly you go shift from one shift to the other. Later on, you're going to see how key that's going to be, right? And so realize that you do want to get used to very quickly emerging and changing things, but if you can do the 2D center lines later on, I'll go back to my view, toolbars, or my camera, standard views top, and you start to see how the line work actually starts to make sense. What you want to definitely remember to do is go to view, animation, add scene, so that as you jump around, I'm going to add another one back here. as I look around here, I may be looking there, view, animation, add scene. So that basically lets you jump back and forth, scene 1, scene 2, within a drawing. That's the same essentially as a view command. You will see later how what you'd be much better off having done is basically drafted your flat, what you can envision following along with a sweep or an extrude, and then drafting your cross sections in flat space before you bring them there. So Revit, other programs like Inventor are going to do a much similar or better job that you've now would, if you would go in and change this here, it would change the whole bit. But very quickly you can see how the programs look similar or different, but mostly that a lot of the commands are the same. Finally, to finish this out, I'm just going to go to View, Camera, Standard View's top. I'm going to draft over here on the side how I might have done that. I might have done that by doing this. Click from here, take it across here, and then say 35 feet, comma, 25 feet. And then I might have just come in here right away and just saying offset here. Take that off. I want to go 8 inches. I then could have come in here, right click, erase, come over here. I'm going to push that up, holding my mouse down and saying now 8 feet. Later on, I could have gone down to the bottom here. I'm not sure whether it'll now let me offset that, which I don't think it will, but I could just draft. Let's see if it'll let me do the offset here. I don't think it will. It won't let me offset that out, but I could have done this. It could have taken this and said Control, move that out here. As long as it's going to hold the right direction, I can tell it I wanted it to go out 8 inches plus 2 plus 12, maybe 14 inches. And you can kind of get the general stick. I'll do one more of how you might go along the outside there. Go from here, grab that here. Right, got to hit that control key. Always lock it and say 14 inches. And you might have then have come along here and done the same thing. We'll finish this out before we finish the 20 minutes. So here I click that. I hit the control key. It's remembering that and jumping there, which is pretty nice. Go here. Within that, hit a control. It's finding that direction. It should generally find the 14 inches. And in fact, I'll finally now take, even though you're down below, this kind of sense that you can kind of click on one end, give it a little intuition of what you want, and very often it'll find it. And you could probably go here. This may or may not work per se, depending on how things went. The locks are a little bit odd. Go back and then show it here. Does there. And it tends to fill that stuff in. So later on, we will see that you're better off doing a lot in AutoCAD and sending as much taking your time before you go out over here. But those of you, I'm just moving around here, you can see how quickly that these programs, how they work similarly. But you do want to learn to draft in SketchUp the AutoCAD way a little bit before you go much. All right, I'm going to go out farther here. I'm kind of trying to find that. And then when I go to here, hopefully it'll find its way down, back over the top. See how it wants to find that? It should try to find that as well. Almost done. Okay, we're looking almost and going through here. Right-click Erase. So you'll see later on there is probably a much better way to do this, but learning how the extension on this works is you draft to the end, come over, give it a hint backwards, it'll take you forwards. And you see what this does not have is it does not have the fillet command. So when you go to here, as I'm filling these in, all right, I'm going to come back all the way around. Go back this way, over the top. It's going to tend to find that. You see there, it's tending to find that. And now you start to see it immediately as soon as it finds that face, this is only half of it, I can now push this down. I'll move it down 12 inches. Or 11 inches as the case will be. And it only did 1/2. So you get the general sense of the different ways to go about drafting. Later on you'll see I can go ahead if I'm going to do a cutout on a door. There's ways to draft, but you can very used to get doing this. I'm going to go ahead now and offset this one edge. I'm going to move it out with the control key across that face. I'll make it 5 feet. And then I'm going to do that again, cut it across 3 feet. And now I can do this. Somehow, somewhere, some whatever, I can take that. Now you see how it cut it. I can go ahead and control, move that down 2 feet. And now once you've got that, it should have this ability. I'm going to go ahead and push now. With this, it should tend to push through. If I get to the end there, and it doesn't always, you're going to see, I'm going to go edit, undo. So there's probably a particular key. I'm going to push that through. It's now done it, so I can generally see that I have pushed through that door. You might have some issues down below there, but that's the kind of how a lot of these things will work in terms of cutting the door out for you. So we'll start talking about how you do architectural plans. I would tell you concentrate on figuring out where your center lines are, get those in, and then like with the multi-line, come and do the rest after you got that good base work. Thanks for listening.